Hey, we are back. Another edition of Kevin's Corner, 1 week from the NFL Combine. I am Kevin Bowen, Eddie Garrison. Across the way, boy, this quiet nature to the offseason, Eddie, it's about to be over. And
thankfully.
Thankfully. And typically when the Combine gets here, it can be over in a hurry. Right now we're in that 2-week window with the franchise tag and the ability to utilize that. Chris Ballard has never been one to do things early in his tenure, so I would guess if he is going to use that tag, it's going to be right up until that deadline, which again is March 5th. And then free agency March 13th. Like we said, Combine, Ballard and Steichen will meet the media next week. We'll probably do our next pod maybe right after that, Eddie, as I'm talking out loud here on this Wednesday morning. How are you doing, man?
Doing well. Did you enjoy All-Star Week?
I did, yeah. It was, I'm heavily biased and very selfish and just cool, frankly, to see our city host something like that. We had Chris Gall on from Visit Indy, big corporation here in Indy that obviously spearheads putting on some of these events. I mean, think about this, man. You go NBA All-Star Weekend and you go NFL Combine in a 2-week period.
That's crazy.
I mean, those are two of the bigger sporting events, multi-day sporting events you're going to get in, frankly, the entire United States in a calendar year, and you get it in our city, and you get it in just a 2-week period. So that's just really wild to me. And again, I'm heavily biased, but I love it for our city and think it's really, really cool. So I enjoyed it. It was fun going to Lucas Oil. In a very different setting. Saturday night, I've seen several basketball games in that stadium, but it's been a while. And then, even All-Star Sunday night for how bad the product is. Still pretty cool just to see the sights and the sounds and everything behind the scenes. So good All-Star weekend. Kind of catching my breath here this week, and then it's going to ramp up in a hurry start next week.
Yep, the Combine is here, and next thing you know, the Convention Center and Lucas Oil Stadium will look how it used to look and not the way that it did this past week, which is kind of wild to me to think about.
It certainly will. Mapping out today's pod, we're going to rank the free agents. It's an annual exercise I do. Stoplights. Rosie Bowen loves to talk about the different colors of the stoplights, so we'll do that here.
Which is her favorite color?
Well, green means go, and she always wants me to drive faster. So green. That means I think you should bring them back. Yellow could go both ways on. Red, really don't think they should be brought back. So that's how we'll rank this free agent class for the Colts as we start to get closer. I mean, 3 weeks from today, as we record this, is the start of free agency. Other thing I'd mention, Eddie, is we'll slot in that Cato June interview. I know we've teased that for a couple weeks now. We did this with Cato leading into the Super Bowl. For those unfamiliar with what Cato's been up to, obviously won a Super Bowl with the Colts back in 2006, but also he's their assistant linebackers coach. So we'll get EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin stories. We'll get a lot of stories from the Super Bowl run, and I've always joked with them. Marlon Jackson stole the interception from him. Cato was in position for the INT. Marlon stole it from him, so he shares kind of a funny story on that front. But again, we're going to rank the free agents, get to Cato June. Good amount of Twitter questions for this week. I do, Eddie, if you don't mind, let's just start a little bit with Michael Pittman Jr. and the franchise tag. Again, I think even NFL-wide, you rarely see teams throw out the tag early in the window. I want to say it's like 2 or 3 players in the last handful of years have gotten the tag in February. Typically, it is a March thing, and that window started yesterday. The 20th of February will extend for 2 weeks through March 5th. And I think our audience largely knows what the tag means. But, again, if you tag him with that non-exclusive tag, he's locked in for 2024. It's the 1-year deal. It's north of $20 million. You'd keep him off the open market on March 13th. You'd have until mid-July to sign him to a long-term deal. If you don't tag him by March 5th, that would leave 8 days. 8 days until free agency starts for you to get a long-term deal done. And I expect Michael Pittman Jr. to be back. I don't know exactly how it'll work, but you paid non-premium positions before. You better pay a premium position when it's Anthony Richardson's presence in the building. And, could Michael Pittman Jr., Eddie, have been more productive in his first 4 seasons? I guess. If I'm Michael Pittman Jr.'s agent, I'd present the 4 quarterbacks that guy has played with and say, remind me, Colts, what did you do with each of those quarterbacks after the season? And that could probably tell a pretty accurate story as well. I know the Phillip Rivers situation was more of a retirement, probably still some mixed messaging on exactly what that was, but still, with Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan and obviously Gardner Minshew here, it's not like he's had great quarterback continuity or even above average quarterback play. I do think one aspect to the tag that I'm curious your thoughts on this, Eddie, is if you tag him and then you wait for the long-term deal, what that would do, and by wait I say wait till the summer, it would allow you to be in a position of wiggle room. It would allow you to be in a position of a little bit more flexibility for this offseason. By signing him to a long-term deal right here, right now, it obviously locks you in financially moving forward with, a good amount of guaranteed money and whatever, 4 for 90-something, whatever you want to throw out as the contract value. But there's just a little seed in the back of my brain, Eddie, that says this. Tag him, wait till July to try and get the long-term deal. Wait till June, whatever. But I think I want to leave the door cracked for the crazy idea. I want to leave the door a little bit open for, hey guys, it's the Titans. We want to get rid of A.J. Brown. Wait, what? This is not April Fool's Day? You're going to trade him? Oh, yeah, we would be interested. Does that situation arise? It's probably unlikely, but does a situation like that arise somewhere around the NFL in the next couple of weeks and months? Because if you do that and all of a sudden you make a big splash, you might not want 90-some million tied up in Michael Pittman Jr. So that would be a potential wiggle room idea that I would have with toss the tag on him, keep him off the open market, but you never know how free agency is going to unfold. You never know how the draft's going to unfold. A.J. Brown was day of the draft, back a couple of years ago. So that is just a little thought I have from it. Would you run the risk of Michael Pittman Jr. perhaps not participating at all in the spring offseason program? Yeah. And that's, that largely happens with these tag candidates.
Do you think he would do that, though, knowing the kind of guy and player that he is?
No, but I think his agent might tell him to do it and say, look what Jonathan Taylor did. And the last thing we want, and it's more of a leverage tool than anything of saying, hey, we need to create some long-term guarantees here. And again, would the Colts look at it and say, man, Richardson's coming back. We really would like to get Pittman Jr. out there by mid-May. And honestly, Eddie, if you want to balance out both of those situations, why not do a deal like the first week of May? Free agency is largely over. The draft is over. For the most part, once you get to that first week of May, aren't we kind of done with the significant nature to an NFL offseason? Transactionally, I mean, so, again, if you did early May, OTA start in mid-May? So then you would have him out there, theoretically, for those 13 sessions of OTAs and the 3 mini-camp practices. So just food for thought, franchise tag wise. Anything tag related you want to get to?
Yeah, I do. I wrote about this on 1075thefan.com just shortly after I think you wrote about the Colts nearing franchise tag decision on Michael Pittman Jr. Mine was more so about will they do it, and if so, which tag will they use? Because I don't know if many people know, the NFL has 3 different types of franchise tags that you can give a player. You've got the exclusive tag. That's the most common used franchise tag, where the player gets the top 5 on average of their position. That'll be their salary for the upcoming season.
And by the way, I meant exclusive. I might have said non-exclusive. Yes, thank you for bringing that back up.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So pretty much if you slap the exclusive franchise tag on Michael Pittman Jr., he can't negotiate with any teams. He is here, done, forget it, period, unless the Colts trade him because they can't come to an agreement. But his contract would be 1 year around $20.6 million because that's the average of the top 5 players at the wide receiver position. Then the other option here for number 2 is the non-exclusive franchise tag. This is what the Baltimore Ravens used on Lamar Jackson last season, where you take the ability of the player to negotiate still with any team, and you have the ability as an NFL franchise to match any contract offer that is presented, in this case to Michael Pittman Jr. And if the Colts say, you know what, Baltimore, your offer's too rich, you can have him. They have to give you 2 first-round picks for Michael Pittman Jr. And then the transition tag is option number 3. This is like the most least commonly used franchise tag. It's a little bit of the exclusive and non-exclusive. Basically, the only major difference between the transition tag and the exclusive tag is that instead of the top 5 players at his position, it's the top 10 players at his position. So you lower the value a little bit in that contract aspect of it, and he can still communicate with other teams, and the Colts still has a first right of refusal as to whether or not he is retained. But if they don't decide to match the contract offer, then the Colts would not receive anything in return for Michael Pittman Jr.
And thank you for laying all of that out. You
mentioned, I hope you're not confused there. I tried to explain as best I could.
There's no way in sharing that without an ounce of confusion. I mean, yeah. I even confuse annually when I go through kind of the tag definitions anyways. But it's worth pointing out, and as you also did when you rattled that off, the other two are just so unlikely in the nature to that. I mean, is anyone really giving up 2 first-round picks for Michael Pittman Jr.?
Right.
That would obviously be ludicrous in my mind for a team to do that on top of the contractual. I mean, there are questions about Lamar Jackson last year for teams doing it. So I would think the exclusive tag is the only one that would be utilized. And I don't know, maybe I'm far-fetched with that. But we'll see how this plays out. Again, 13 days to go as we record this. But with that, Eddie, let's get into ranking some of the free agents.
Okay, so we will start with the green. These players are ranked from darker green to lighter green. I'll do these. I'll do a group of 3 and then a group of 2. Okay. Just that way we don't have 5 players or 6 players here all being talked about at once. Obviously, the player we just talked about, Michael Pittman Jr., he's age 26. Kenny Moore, age 28, and Grover Stewart, who is age 30. And
again, the darker green, as we go in order, there is an order for me. It is the heavy should bring back to, as you get into the lighter green, I could listen to some stuff elsewhere. I mean, with Kenny and Grover, they both probably fall into a similar boat, Eddie, of like, what else are you turning to in your roster? There is a positionally for Grover Stewart, age 30 doesn't worry me as much. That's a position, interior defensive line, where you've seen guys have success around that age and even into their early 30s. And then again with Kenny, you just have no one that you'd seriously want to pass that torch to. And it was a bounce back season to him. I think another thing to remind yourself about Kenny Moore, let's say Julian Blackmon walks, Eddie. Boy, don't you need a trustworthy veteran even more back there? And I guess there's pun intended with that, but damn, that would be such a vital communication component that is now missing, and so even more would be on the plate of Kenny with that situation. So yeah, I would throw in order, and it's very close, and we're probably nitpicking a little bit. Michael Pittman Jr., Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart is my first 3 in the green category.
Then the other 3 in the green category, you just briefly mentioned him, Julian Blackmon, age 25, Tyquan Lewis, who is 29, and Rigoberto Sanchez, who is also 29.
Yeah, this rounds out the green group. I want to focus on those 2 we haven't talked a lot about here in just a second. The one thing with Blackmon is, again, have you found stopgap answers in free agency before at safety? I think the answer to that is yes. And you can't totally ignore the injury history. So I think, and in Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas, I see guys that have shown me not a ton, but a little bit more than like Eric Johnson at defensive tackle, or frankly, I know no one at nickel corner that is really that you've drafted and you feel good about. I thought Tyquan Lewis was so much more than a feel-good story last season for the Colts. I thought he was damn productive, versatile. I mean, Eddie, he played all 17 games. I mean, think about how horrifying those previous 2 seasons were for him. Halloween both years, right? Or the game before Halloween, or the game on it, patella injuries end his season. Not only does he play all 17 games, but I've mentioned these stats before. I mean, he was more productive, just sheer numbers-wise, than a Kwity Paye, and playing far less snaps. So I think for a position group you like to rotate bodies at, I think Tyquan Lewis deserves to be in the green category. And, I thought Sanchez, when you really looked at the numbers, it was actually a better season than I realized. It was a career best in net punting average. He didn't have a single touchback and 68 punts. it wasn't perfect. It wasn't Pro Bowl, but, he returned from an Achilles injury, I thought, quite well, and he continues to be, a pretty, steadying force when it comes to, holding and things like that. And I do think that is important to acknowledge as well. I do think, similar to Gardner Minshew and similar to Zach Moss, there is a question when you get to some of these free agents because Sanchez, that'll be his third contract he signed here in Indy. So naturally the value is going to go up. Do you penny pinch at all? Do you say, all right, backup quarterback, let's pinch a little. Backup running back, okay, can we save a few dollars? Punter is probably a position you could do that at. But do you want to? Again, age 29 for him, but I think that would be a question that you would have with Rigoberto Sanchez. So, again, to recap the green category, should bring back Pittman Jr., Moore, Grover Stewart, Julian Blackmon, Tyquan Lewis, Rigoberto Sanchez. I feel like in past years, Eddie, when I've done this exercise, they've tended to bring back, I'd say right around like 80% of the guys I've put in the green category. So it has kind of matched up with how they view it internally. Again, this is my opinion on what I would look into, but I can fully acknowledge financially, you might not have the ability to do all of this, or you might not have the desire to do all of it if you can make a bigger splash somewhere on the outside market.
If you had to guess, which player out of this green list would most likely not be retained?
Yeah, it's probably Blackmon.
Even though he's the youngest out of this entire group of players, he's only 25. But
he's got the most injury history of the ones that really matter. I mean, Tyquan and Rigo obviously have injury history, but of the top four, he's got the most. And again, safety is a position where you can find the 1-year stopgaps. So that's why I would say that. I love Julian Blackmon. I think our audience knows that. I just felt like I try to harp on that presence late in the season of like, damn, that is a bigger loss than we're giving it credit to. Mm-hmm. And just because Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders didn't totally capitalize on it doesn't mean that we should ignore it in Week 18 and then boom, that game unfolds the way we have. It'd probably be Blackmon. Would you disagree with that? Would you say, Tyquan and Rigo fall into a different category to me in terms of shades of green.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you just because of the injury history, but I don't know. To me, he's also, he's right there with Kenny Moore simply because the lack of experience in the secondary, and plus when he went down, you saw the tackling issues arise a little bit because he's just such a consistent tackler. He was second on the team in interceptions, I want to say, or maybe first. I can't remember when he went down. So, he's just a playmaker, and you don't get many playmakers out of the safety position across the NFL.
It's a great point. And I think he, if I'm not mistaken, career highs in tackles for losses and passes defensed. And he's versatile too when you get into a pinch and you get guys injured during a game. So, yeah, he would, if and when that happens, Eddie, I'll come in here and totally acknowledge it's a big loss. But again, it's a numbers game. And if all of a sudden you view safety as not the most premium and you view another position as more premium and you can make a splash there, you got to see how the entire puzzle plays out.
Moving on to the yellow category. This is like the green, dark yellow to lighter yellow. So think of it as like a mustard, and then you get to
Dijon mustard.
I don't know your preference, Kroger, whatever.
Kroger.
Your local grocery store or whatever.
Needlers.
Yeah, light yellow, kind of like I don't even know what a light yellow looks like.
Kroger is a great Kroger right there off Michigan.
Is it really?
I do stop it on the way home.
Okay. Starting with Gardner Minshew, and then Zach Moss, Danny Pinter. Those are the three you've got starting from darker to lighter.
Yeah, and again, with Minshew and Moss, how valuable do you view them? That's the big question to me. And how much do they view opportunity elsewhere? That probably is the biggest question with both of them. Gardner is not going to get what he wants here. He wants a realistic chance of starting. You are literally banking on an injury. Richardson's leash is obviously incredibly long. So, if he can find more realistic playing chances elsewhere, isn't he gone? To me, it just seems almost obvious if he finds that. Moss, the confusing thing there is I'm fascinated to see what his running back market looks like.
Yeah.
it is a loaded running back free agency class.
Saquon.
Loaded.
Josh Jacobs.
Henry. Eckler. I mean, it is. Yes,
Tony Pollard.
It is Tony Pollard. I mean, it is loaded. Now, we know the markets those guys will probably want, potentially might even command. Do teams say, oh, we're totally content on shopping bottom shelf at running back? We don't need to go top shelf. Because if they shop near the bottom, nothing against Zach Moss, but he's not those players.
Right.
But he's still pretty reliable. So Moss might all of a sudden have a 3 or 4 team market that, Barkley might not have at his price tag, or Eckler at his price tag. So I just strictly out of curiosity, cannot wait to see what it looks like for Zach Moss. Again, I don't think it's like the end of the world. I mean, Trey Sermon, Evan Hall, Tyler Goodson, go find another running back. I'm not one that has always, day 3 running back. That's kind of where I'm at. I realize with Taylor, you could do some things differently, or with Richardson, you could do some things financially different with Jonathan Taylor's situation, but I've never been a huge running back guy. But Danny Pinter's an interesting one, Eddie. Does he fall into the Jack Mewhort, Tyquan Lewis? Probably more than Mewhort. Mm-hmm. Give the O-lineman who suffered the season-ending injury, who you liked, and give him another chance. And I think Pinter deserves that, and he rehabbed here in Indy throughout, had a heavy presence at practice seemingly every day I was there. Obviously plenty of local connections from Ball State and South Bend. I do think center, an exercise we did with Joel Erickson when we had him on our show earlier this week, what needs would you consider draft needs? What needs would you consider free agent needs? And just to play it out for you, an example I threw to Joel, I think drafting the center of the future should be something to check in this draft. Mm-hmm. I don't think you need to do it super early. I think you can find it round 4, round 5. But it would make some sense to me. Pair that guy with Richardson. Flip the script. I don't view corner as a need at 15 overall. Like I rank positional need in how I view the draft. And I know that goes against what a lot of people think of best player available. But
how dare you?
I view outside corner as a need in free agency a little bit more. So I think that's an exercise for you. And I don't know, maybe a Pinter re-sign would change some of that. Then the last one here in the yellow, Jannard Avery. He actually had a pretty good camp, and I thought had some decent pass rush burst, and he has been a veteran in this league. So that's a position you can never have too much of. I don't think it's something you do the first day of free agency or anything like that, but he flashed a bit for me. So I'm going to look at that as a potential roster spot.
I was about to say, because I went the first 3 names and I left him last. I was like, who the heck is this guy?
Yeah, which I totally get. But remember, what's his name? Jacob Martin.
Yeah, he's in our next category.
We brought up his name as, oh, wait, that dude played more snaps than Anthony Richardson last year. Every team has the obscure defensive end that gets 12 snaps a game. I felt like Avery was kind of tracking for that until he got hurt.
Now the red, darker red to lighter red. This article will be linked in the podcast description on YouTube and then wherever you download the podcast as well. The red from darker to lighter, Jake Martin, Isaiah McKenzie, Jawan Renfrey, and last but certainly not least, Taven Bryan.
Yeah, Eddie, not going to lose too much sleep over him. At different points in the year, you relied on Bryan, big time. When Grover Stewart went down, didn't think the success was much. McKenzie, I would put him as one of the bigger disappointments of the season individually.
I'm still curious as to what he and Tony Brown did to get that suspension.
Yeah, the best somewhat educated guess I have is a very big internal mistake inside that building. That's about where I'm at with it. I just don't see him coming back. Winfrey kind of got passed up for DJ Montgomery, it seemed like, there late in the season. Boy, if you're Pittman's agent, you can just be like, hey, you guys want to rewatch that Atlanta game? Montgomery and Pierce played how many snaps? How many targets for him? How many catches for him? But yeah, I mean, again, none of these guys I lose sleep over. So it's a 90-man roster. You're going to fill them out with some of these types of guys, but in terms of defining colors, they would fall into the red category. Anything else on ranking the FAs?
I think you've got it all pretty accurately put, in my opinion.
Should we Cato it up?
Nice.
Cato June, we chatted with him again. This is a couple weeks ago leading into the Super Bowl. A lot here for the Colts assistant linebackers coach. The other voice you'll hear in this interview, my co-host Andy Sweeney.
All right, been a fun Tuesday here, broadcasting live from the DriveHubler.com studios. You miss any of Rick Carlisle or Bob Kravitz, you can check it out on the Podcast Center, 1075thefan.com. Reminder as well, usually it's pop quiz about now. We'll do that in 15 minutes where you'll have a chance to win the oil change. We'll also give away a $25 gift card to Cluster Truck. And KB, you've crushed the queso today.
I have crushed the burrito. I've crushed the queso. Am I ready to do? Is it too early for the chocolate chip cookie?
I was about to say, you're going to go to sleep. That's what you're going to do. I hope you have nothing to do after the show. You have anything to cover? Because you're going to bed. That's what you're doing.
I think our next guest would respect the effort that I've had here.
Well, bring in Cato June. Go ahead.
He is
Super Bowl
obviously
champ.
a Super Bowl champ currently. I guess just fresh off a trip to Mobile where he was coaching down in the Senior Bowl and a member of Shane Steichen's staff on the linebackers side of things. Cato June joins us now. Cato, good morning, man. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. You guys eating queso in the morning?
We are housing burritos, chips and queso, and chocolate chip cookies. I don't know if, in 2006 that would have been allowed, but nowadays you could respect that a little, can't you?
I can respect the effort. I can respect this. It's dangerous. That's a dangerous,
We're in radio. Yeah, this is what you do in sports talk radio, Cato.
I can go walk on the treadmill at 3 speed here for a half hour, and once that drop of sweat comes, move on for the day. Cato, as always, thank you for the time. I know Super Bowl week kind of probably conjures up a lot of memories. I kind of want to spin it maybe in a different direction, though. We oftentimes ask about the AFC title game, you guys winning that. Obviously, Reggie's told the story a million times about the Super Bowl, and if he drops that ball, Colts fans probably have him at the bottom of Eagle Creek right now. But certainly tons of memories from those two games. What do you remember about the Baltimore game? 15-6. Like, to me, if I'm a defensive guy,
that's an old school score.
That's the game that I remember the most of any of those runs.
What I remember most is that we kept them out the end zone. Didn't nobody say anything. I mean, it was a great game. We knew we had a great battle, another battle. People talking about our run defense all year that year. We had Jamal Lewis, and probably one of the toughest guys that you're going to go up against, from a running standpoint. But I just remember my. It's funny that I remember this because I shouldn't remember it. But they're going in to score. I think they're probably on the 2 or 3. McNair drops back. He's looking. We're playing our cover 2 stuff. He kind of runs like a shallow over behind me, and I see it, and I'm squeezing to it. He's throwing. He's doing a run spot out behind me, so I'm going to intercept it. And Bethea comes screaming downhill, makes a great break on the ball, and picks it off. So he picks it off, right, and runs into me and knocks me clean out. Like I had probably had no business playing that game, the rest of that game, but he knocks me clean out, and I don't even remember until I saw the replay of how I fell forward on the ground. It was crazy. If you have a chance to go back, I mean, completely out of it. I got to the bench, I'm like, what are y'all cheering for? Like, no, we got an interception. Like, so I think that was like one of the non-memories that I had. Just kind of that back and forth game, but just being able to keep those guys out the end zone in a game that's what was needed to get to the next round.
Well, speaking of taking interceptions away from you, I mean, let's be honest, Marlon takes away the interception from you in the AFC title game, right?
Oh man, everybody had to jump on me in the playoffs, man. I couldn't get there quick enough.
It should be Lamy saying Cato's got it. Cato's got it instead of Marlon's got it.
It was awesome. Because before that play, we were going down there. They're gonna dump it. We're sitting back. We're playing our coverage, and Bub looks at me. We look at each other like, all right, man, here it goes. We're gonna get it now. We're gonna get it this one. And I'll be damned if when he looked down, Brady just instead he tried to look off. He does one of the best to ever do it in terms of looking off and coming back. He comes back across the middle, Bub picks it off. It's like that I don't even know where I ran, because if you see all the videos, everybody kind of runs to Bub, jumps on him, and you see everybody celebrate. I think I ran into the stands. I don't know where I went. I was just so excited.
Oh, it's fantastic. Cato June with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. And then the Super Bowl. I know that you've probably been asked this a million times. I don't know if it was when you arrived there in Miami, if it's the lead up, if it's the game. When did it hit you where it's like chills, like, yo, I'm actually in the Super Bowl?
You know what? Me and Gary Bracker were neighbors. We bought our first houses next to each other, right next door, right? So we would go into work a lot together, just carpool. And when he came out of his house, we carpooled down before we were going down to catch the plane to go down to Miami. And he came across, he came to my garage, and I came out. He had his suit on, and I had my little suit on. It's just like, yes, there it is. We're going to Miami, going to the Super Bowl. He's decked out, I'm decked out. And that, it was like one of those moments, like, because too late, a late round and a free agent guy that's gonna go start in the Super Bowl. I think that, like, at that moment, it was kind of like, it kind of hit us like, man, we done did some stuff now.
Yeah, no kidding. Do you remember the suit that you wore, or like the guys now have expensive bags? Did you have an expensive bag? Do you remember any of the swag you had when you guys were taking the trip there to the Super Bowl?
I tell the young guys now, they be messing with Z and EJ. They think they invented swag, and they invented these glasses. Coach, you didn't know about no Cartiers. That's what I've been rocking Cartiers for 20 years, man. I got Cartiers older than you. What are you talking about? So it's like, I do remember the suit. It was now, mind you, the suit game in that era was a little different.
Sure.
Bigger, longer.
Uh-huh.
We had about 52 buttons on it. It was ridiculous. But I think it was like a tan with a little window pane. I think I had some lime green, like ostrich. It was wild. Like you can kind of step out of your comfort zone when you go into the events like that. So I think I still have that suit. That's one of the suits my wife.
Really?
You could probably fit Booger into one of those pant legs.
Man, I could put both legs for one pant leg. Boy, it's absolutely ridiculous.
The baggy look is coming back, Cato, just a little bit, just so you know. Everything comes back around that is popular again. So.
And I'm so mad because I had all these like big Averex. I don't know if you remember those big Averex leather jackets, the Pelly. My wife's like, "You're not gonna wear those anymore." I'm like, "Yo," and I'll go to the store. I'm like, "See, I told you, I should have kept them."
I'm gonna need one of those after the meal that I've had here on this Tuesday morning. Cato June is with us, obviously Super Bowl winner, Pro Bowl linebacker, and currently a member of Shane Steichen's coaching staff. You brought up Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. Let's start with Zaire. I think the story is incredible, really, and probably a bit reminiscent, honestly, of even you or Gary. What did you know about Zaire Franklin before you arrived here to Indianapolis, and what have you learned about him?
Well, I know he was naturally following the team. I know he was like the special teams demon and that sort of thing. But when I got here, you're doing the evals and stuff, and he hadn't, been a starter since before I got here. So just seeing, a guy that's if he's a special teams captain, he's got some stuff to him, right? Because, people that have never done it, don't understand, don't know special teams is that work. So, just seeing the mindset of that type of guy, you had a great guy in the room. So when he had the opportunity to go in and start, I think it just carried over. He's a three-time captain at Syracuse, right? Like it's not new to him. It might be new to everybody else, but this is not new to him. This is just who he is, and so that's the beauty of watching him lead and watching him, just be a great teammate, a great person, a great player, because this is just who he's been. It's easy to go in a room and when you have guys like Zaire that you can coach because, they have the makeup of what it takes to be great.
And Cato, he's going to be pissed off. He's already not happy he didn't make the Pro Bowl. You know that, right? You saw him tweet that out. He's not happy.
As he should be. She should be unhappy because it's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to say that a guy for 2 years has almost led the league in tackles, has done it back-to-back. I can see, all right, 1 year, all right, it could be a fluke. Nobody knows his name. And maybe, I don't know, maybe because he played the 1 o'clock games. I don't want to get into no conspiracy things, but all I know is when I talk to him about stuff, I'm like, look, just keep doing what you're doing. You can't control that stuff, right? But what you can control is, what you do and how you respond. And I think about a guy it kind of reminds me of that situation, almost like London Fletcher. I don't know if you guys remember.
Sure.
London went years without getting the recognition he was supposed to get. And everybody looks at him now like, man, this dude probably, could be in the Hall of Fame, and so it just happens sometimes. But at the end of the day, I think that you can't worry about it too much. But it's hard to say because you do think about it. You do think, look, you want to be acknowledged with the best when you are one of the best. And so it is frustrating. But you come back next year. We're gonna come back next year, get another 180 tackles, about probably 2 or 3 picks, take one to the house. Man, we'll be right now.
You'd be good to go. Cato June with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. How will that party be if Reggie Wayne gets into the Hall of Fame? How do you think that party will be?
Oh, it's gonna be epic. and all I know is I told him, I said, look, man, we got practice the next day. Now understand that. we can't pull it. It's gonna be like 06. It'd be better than our 06 birthday party. We'll have to tell you that story later. You know what I mean? But it'll be that. It'll be all of that and more.
Sunglasses abound on the practice field. Certainly that next
all day. In the meeting. They're gonna be in the meeting.
Yeah. Oh wait, a lot of Gatorade trips for Coach June here on the practice field there today.
I'm a Pedialyte guy.
Pedialyte. There we go.
There you go. It
exactly.
Works.
Cato, last one for me. And again, Cato June. Awesome conversation here. Thinking back on the Super Bowl win for the Colts, the Pro Bowl appearance for him, and obviously currently coach of assistant linebackers coach on Shane Steichen's staff. When you look at EJ Speed, I think a guy that, in a way, started on special teams, and now you see the physical gifts on display. Is there times that you look at him and think, dude, if I was blessed with your physical attributes, you know what I'd be doing with that?
No, I don't think of it like that. I just kind of make fun of him because it's like, he's 6'3", he's fast, he's 230 pounds or whatever he is. It's just one of those things. You look at these dudes that are gift like that, and they can go and make plays. You kind of admire it. Not to say I wish I had it. You know what I mean? Because I always make fun of the guy. Oh, y'all can't do what we do in our short area. Look at my short area quickness right now. I'm down there trying to fake, knowing that if I move too fast, I might pull a hamstring or something right now. So it's just but you look at guys like that, like EJ, man, it's just another thing. When guys get opportunities, right? And he's the same thing. He played special teams and was a playmaker on special teams. He was a demon, and he gets his opportunity, and sometimes all that takes is a guy to get his opportunity to be a full-time starter. And as you saw maybe the last 3, I think it was the last 3 games or so, he was the leading tackler, and just in terms of play. And he's gonna always, I call him Mr. Third and Short, right? Because it doesn't matter. When it's third and short, fourth down, you already know what's going to happen. He's going to make a play. He's going to TFL, knock the ball out. He's just a fearless type of guy. And that's what you can appreciate and love about him because he's fearless. He has athletic ability. He's playmaking ability, big-time playmaking ability. And now he's getting his opportunity that he didn't get in the first 4 or 5 years. So, and now you're just seeing who he is. So it'll be exciting to see those 2 guys out there full time the whole year next year, and just watch the amount of plays that they're gonna make. It'll be fun.
Fun trip down memory lane with one of the Colts greats. That is Cato June from that Super Bowl run back in 2006. And then obviously talking a little bit about the current state as he is a member of the defensive staff under Shane Steichen. Coach, can't thank you enough. I know a lot of fun memories for Colts fans to reminisce about. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hope the Senior Bowl treated you well, and enjoy a little bit of quiet time here in the offseason.
I appreciate it, man.
Well, thank you to Cato June for that. We should have either Shane Steichen or Chris Ballard not only at the podium next week, but hopefully on our show as well. So I think we could probably toss that into next week's podcast. Again, probably expect it a little bit later in the week for that. Certainly keep you updated on when Ballard and Steichen are scheduled to meet the media at the Combine. I think typically it's right on that Wednesday of Combine week, so we'll be down there with our shows.
Usually Ballard's in the afternoon.
Yeah, I feel like last year they were back-to-back, if I remember correctly, but I don't know at all. All those years run together. Anything else, Eddie, before we get to Twitter questions?
I don't think so.
Let's do it.
All right, we've got a long list of Twitter questions. We will start with Colton. What are your thoughts on moving Rodney Thomas to corner? He played corner in college, and if the Colts re-signed Julian Blackmon, that would clean up a logjam at the safety position.
I hear the question. I'm good. No, I'm good. The body type to me has always been more of a safety. I don't see corner in that. I think it's a lot to ask of him, too, after a couple of years of playing safety to make that move. You know, I kind of view corner as Juju and Jalen Jones and Flowers coming back from the Achilles and then a veteran free agent. Those four guys for two outside spots. It's kind of how I view it. Obviously, Kenny Moore would be in the slot then. And, Cross and Thomas, back there at safety, and we'll see what happens with Blackmon and how you look at veteran there. I kind of like the third safety. I like the idea of that. It's an option on game days. It's a position that if a guy gets hurt at, you can obviously help out. But I understand the question, but no.
Next up is Wake Spike. Hey guys, if the Raiders release Jimmy Garoppolo, would it make sense to pursue him if Gardner Minshew leaves Indianapolis? I know he's injury prone, but as a teaching tool, wouldn't this make sense? If not him, who would you pick as the next backup quarterback?
So it's interesting how you view backup. We talked about penny pinching a little bit earlier. Garoppolo is going to command a good amount of money.
Will he? As a backup?
I would think so, just based off the win-loss experience. I get the injury history is there, but how do you view injury history with a backup? Is there any part of you that views it as, wait, he's my backup? He's not going to get hurt unless he gets in a game. Now, obviously, if he gets in a game, who knows what can happen. But
right.
I guess when I view backup, I view my checklist differently. Do you want the same style quarterback? Do you want Tyrod Taylor? Do you want Tyler Huntley? Do you want chemistry? Does that matter? Do you want guys accepting of the roles? I know the Ryan Tannehill, Malik Willis quote got really blown up, but that is an element too of you need a QB that's just going to help groom and relish that role and accept that role. I mean, the role is not to play when you come here. Yes, there could be a time that you are needed, certainly, but that's not the main expectation. And then lastly, I guess, would be the experience factor. Are you more Garoppolo? Are you more Tannehill? Or are you more, again, style guy? Tyler Huntley has, less than 10 starts, but stylistically, it's similar to Richardson. Or do you opt for more of a Tannehill, which would be more of the Matt Hasselbeck type of oh no, if I need this dude, he can win me a game, or he can keep the ship afloat, however you want to describe it. So, I've honestly looked at that free agent list. I'm like, would Jacoby Brissett make some sense? I know people view, backup quarterbacks in such a negative light, but it's a group that I don't know if anyone is going to be jumping up and down for. If you want to nitpick Tyrod Taylor, you would nitpick his health. If you want to nitpick Tyler Huntley, you would nitpick, with Baltimore, he hasn't been able to win more games, if you look at the numbers there. So I don't know if overwhelmingly there'll be anybody that jumps out the page or jumps off the page at me. I stand by the draft a quarterback in the 5th or 6th round. Get someone that Shane Steichen has identified, not to be your backup, but basically to be your new Ellinger. Someone you've identified with this new coaching staff, that's the guy you groom. That's kind of how I'd view it. And, I think I've said this in several pods now. That's how I would kind of view things moving forward at that position.
David is up next. Is guaranteed money the sticking point for Michael Pittman Jr. and contract talks? And is Jim Irsay's health factoring in too, as guaranteed money is a cash flow issue that he need to sign off on?
Yeah, that is a good question.
On the Irsay front, any news? Have you heard anything?
No. I mean, he continuing to tweet. That's it, really. And I guess I'll reiterate what I've said before in the pod of when we typically see him. We don't really see him at the combine. That's not something we've seen in the past. It's owners' meetings, which is about a month from now in Orlando, and then the draft. That Saturday of the draft is when we usually hear from him again. I would like to have think like this would have been chatted about for a while. What to do with Pittman, and you plan for stuff like this. I think you always have to be in planning mode, and I think there's also an element too with Irsay of like Mike Bloom, their cap guy. He knows the amount of cash, and he knows that, and it's his job to spend as he chooses. Now you make sense of that. You make the accounting work for us on that end there. But it's probably a fair question. I don't think the Colts have operated in a way here over the last month or so that they've necessarily needed Jim Irsay sign off on much of this. As you get into free agency, there's probably a little bit more that you would need from that. So that would be something that I would keep an eye on.
Rich is up next. First, he states congrats to me and Kevin on a successful podcast season.
Oh,
and that he's looking forward to the off-season podcasts. First question, when can we expect to see Anthony Richardson throwing a football, which has now been answered?
Yes. When was that? Was that last week or 2 weeks ago?
I think it was both. There was a video that surfaced after the Super Bowl, and I brought it up to you, and you were like, is that him throwing again, or is that him of an old video? Because he said soon. Yeah.
His agent had the one last week. I don't want this to sound like harsh or anything like that, but part of me doesn't even care if he's ahead of schedule. And maybe I have PTSD from Andrew Luck or just PTSD in general. I'm just just get the dude out there in mid-May. I don't really care how it looks for the next 3 months. Sure, I guess the videos of him throwing are all great, and it's better than the alternative of he's getting a second opinion, all that. But dude, take your time. And honestly, 3 months from now, it somewhat matters. What really matters is late July. 3 months from now in mid-May is what kind of matters. I think it's important for Richardson to get that full offseason program where he's the starter. Remember, last year it was very much splitting reps with Minshew. Probably Minshew got a little bit more than Richardson there. One thing I am curious is I had a back and forth with a listener about this. Is this a time to not break down the motion, but is this the time to tweak anything?
Recreate?
Yeah, is there anything you viewed as a
Tom House yeah.
Right. Okay, we tweak it, but if we had the opportunity, we'd probably do a little more than tweaking. Do you view this as that opportunity? And I know that sounds a little big, and maybe this is like the Tiger Woods golf swing in me coming out of Tiger winning the Masters by 15 shots in 97 and then deciding to rebuild the whole golf swing.
I-24, Tiger Woods.
Or 12 shots, I should say. 15 was the U.S. Open, right, in 2000. Obviously, he eventually got there, but there weren't some great Tiger moments in 98 and 99 until he won the PGA. So that's kind of a thought I've had with Richardson of have you viewed this as a time to really recreate something? Not that I ever thought the motion, I don't think people view it. I don't think they've ever thought it needs a whole lot of retweaking or retooling. But there's been talk about footwork and lower body stuff. And, the motion itself, I've always said, it looks very natural to me. It looks very baseball-y. It looks very shortstop, very center fielder with a great arm, all of that. But I guess that is just a question, motion-wise, is there anything that is different with him?
Just a Notre Dame reference away from a bingo. If all of them have the Kevin Bowen bingo card. The other question that Rich has is, which position, in your opinion, should the Colts attack via trade this offseason?
Well, if you're going to go trade route, that would be wideout wise to me. I mean, again, I think we've mentioned before, if you look at the list of top wideouts in this league, they're either drafted or they're traded. You don't find them really in free agency. So if you're going to make the splash there, trades are so minimal, though, and you're giving up quality draft picks. It's hard to gauge.
Isn't it fascinating, like, comparing, like, NFL to NBA? Like,
so fascinating to me. The trade deadline is so quiet when you compare the leagues.
Yeah.
And I get it. Inserting a football player is different than certainly a baseball player when, hey, just go play third base and you'll have minimal interaction with your teammates from a get on the same page standpoint. But, yeah, it is. It is very, very interesting. The 13th pick for Buckner, that's a blockbuster.
Yeah.
And, obviously the Colts have probably been a little bit more on the trade front when you think of Carson Wentz and you think of Buckner. Those are two big trades that this franchise has made there. So, yeah, wideout's the one I'd come, edge rusher kind of pops into my head. What was it, 2 years ago we saw Ngakoue for Rock Yassin. That was certainly notable. But yeah, I'd go there.
About 4 Twitter questions left. In conclusion, Rich says, love the pod, but he's been here since the Carson Wentz Emergency podcast. Keep up the great work. So that's why I said you need 2 more for the bingo, because we just got Carson Wentz and Andrew Luck in the last question thrown into the podcast. Steven is up next. Do you think the Colts would have enough money or a chance to sign Chris Jones? I know it would be a lot of money, but pairing him with DeForest Buckner this year would make for a very disruptive defensive line. I believe Buckner is also a free agent next year, so Jones could be his replacement. Would love to see Jones, Pittman, and Moore signed. Do you think it's possible? And would you do it if you were a general manager?
Boy, I just think that's way too much defensive tackle investment. And Chris Jones is not, he's not really a run, you don't view him as like the run stopper. Like if you let Grover walk, I don't think Chris Jones is a nose tackle per se. I did think it's interesting. Nate Atkins brought this point up from the Star. Do you extend Buckner? Buckner's a free agent next year, if I'm not mistaken, 2025. Do you extend him, try to get that cap number down a little bit? Buckner looks like a dude that's going to play well into his 30s. Mm-hmm. So do you extend him, get ahead of that, bring that number down for this offseason, save a little money? I think that's interesting. As great of a player as I think Chris Jones is, and boy, Eddie, we're going to look back on the Super Bowl in 5 years, and you'll look at that box score, and you're going to see 0 sacks next to Chris Jones' name and 0 sacks next to Nick Bosa's name, and it's going to be such an inaccurate description of how those two played in the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I get at with kind of the Kwity Paye thing. You can get to the 8.5 sack number this year and think, oh wow. You can look at that and be like, okay, that's a good number. But when you get into pressures, you get into quarterback hits, you get into tackles for loss, and you look at the snap counts, the consistency is not there in creating havoc. And that's where I do think, again, Bosa and Jones, you look at that game and it's like, holy shit. They had much more of an impact on that game there. But, as far as this question's concerned, I just think that's way too much money.
3 Twitter questions left. Adam, Mason, and Pumpkin Pastry. We'll start with Adam. Regarding free agency, do you view the 2024 Colts as appealing of a destination as the 2022 offseason when Stephon Gilmore signed with Indianapolis? In other words, will big-name free agents want to come to Indy?
I don't think you're necessarily there just yet, but you're certainly better. And let's be real, money matters. That's what matters first, second, and third. Your quarterback presence is there. Now, having said that, I many other AFC teams are in this boat, Eddie. I feel like I follow a couple Texans people, and they right now are like hey, could we get Saquon Barkley sort of thought? And you don't think C.J. Stroud's presence, creates that sort of attraction to guys when, they're trying to compare the pros and cons of those teams. So, again, it helps, but I think we're still a little premature to say that Richardson would have the same sort of presence as some of these other QBs in the AFC. Again, better, but I don't think at that level yet.
Pumpkin Pastry is next. With numerous top draft experts saying NIL money has greatly thinned the college draft prospects who would normally get drafted between round 5 and 7 this season, should we expect any alterations to how Chris Ballard will operate during the 2024 draft comparative to past seasons?
Yeah, again, I think it's one of those things where, well, first off, I think it's a great question. Boy, I feel like Pumpkin Pastry asks good questions. Ask more, if you don't mind. I mean, that back end is different now, draft wise. I think it's a bit of a crapshoot. Unless you're in a total rebuild and a total overhaul, I'm probably a little bit more of quality versus quantity. I understand the draft or the dartboard element of a draft. And when you only have 7 picks, it's kind of hard to do a whole lot of wheeling and dealing there. Certainly up, but back would be more the route. And I just think the undrafted class, if you can be an attractive spot there, you can really tap into some things on that end that I don't think is a whole lot different from 7th round picks. Like, certainly the Colts, and Zaire Franklin, I mean, he's the poster child to it. Eddie, do we want to roll down the other Colts 7th round picks in the Ballard era? And again, this is no knock on Ballard. I'm just simply using this as a tool to describe 7th round picks. Certainly, if you look at the early years, that's where you see more of the, Matt Adams, special teamer. Jackson Barton, Javon Patterson, really nothing there. Mike Strawn and Will Fries. I mean, certainly Fries you got something out of. Rodney Thomas, a little bit there. And then, Jalen Jones. Honestly, 7th round has been pretty good when I do that exercise. It's probably more the 6th rounders that you look at, whether it's, Curtis Brooks or Jordan Glasgow or Desmond Pittman or Gary Green or I guess Isaiah Rodgers, Robert Windsor, Deion Kane, some of those guys that are a little bit more of a, didn't work out here. So, again, it is a great question from an NIL standpoint, and the fact that underclassmen, a lot of them are coming back more and more. I do think it's probably lessen that load. And I think the other thing to remember, too, is, when the Colts make a draft board, Ballard said this quite often, they rank about 100-some prospects, 150. It's not like they have 300 guys on their board. Mm-hmm. They're only drafting 150. So, if all 150 come off the board, do you just trade out to next year? But that is a good question. That is a very, in-depth draft question.
Final question goes to Mason. I know we answered this one a couple pods ago, but just wanted to see if your thoughts changed on this. He saw the first mock draft by ESPN, and it has the Colts selecting Brock Bowers at 15th overall. He was totally underwhelmed with the tight end room this season. Yes, Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox, Jelani Woods, when healthy, and potentially Will Mallory are, quote, nice players, not including Drew Ogletree in here, as he'll surely be released. Most of the time, games in the NFL are won and lost by your top 20-ish players, and I wouldn't consider any of the Colts tight ends, quote, top half of the roster guys. In my opinion, the addition of a guy like Brock Bowers would be a huge, huge addition for the offense and Anthony Richardson's development. Adding a big-time pass catcher to press the middle of the field to go along with Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., if he is retained, Alec Pierce, and Josh Downs. What do you say?
Again, what does Ballard think of tight ends? And I guess, does he group pass catchers with that? I like the idea of Bowers. I like it a lot. Bowers is going to be an interesting combine guy. If he really sets the world on fire with that 40-yard dash time, I mean, does that lock him into the top 10? Was it Field Yates or Daniel Jeremiah? One of the two. It might have been both. They had Bowers going past 15. I was listening to Field. I think Field said he heavily debated him to the Colts at 15.
I believe Daniel Jeremiah yesterday released his mock draft 2.0, and it had Brock Bowers going 18 to Cincinnati.
Okay. And the Ogletree court date has been pushed back into deeper into March. Does that play out before the draft? The Mo Alley Cox thing is interesting.
Yeah.
Is that $5 million you feel like you can easily save?
You talk about penny pinching.
Right. So that one to play out. But I am bullish on Bowers. I'm bullish on him as a player. I acknowledge that taking tight end that early does push back on a little bit of positional value. I get that, list me where the top 10 receivers in the league were drafted and list me where the top 10 tight ends in the league were drafted, and you're going to find the wideouts drafted much higher than the tight ends. I totally get that. But again, with Richardson and the support for him so vital, I think you can make some exceptions to the rules here. That would be a tough one to pass up for me, but I'm probably team corner, not at 15 either. And I know some people would disagree with that. Certainly a lot of draft pundits would disagree with that as well. I'm probably more pass catcher, edge rusher in that general range here. So
yeah, in that mock draft, DJ had the Colts taking Nate Wiggins, the cornerback out of Clemson.
He's been a popular name. Both the Alabama guys have been popular names. And I think that's a question for Ballard next week. A little bit more. What do you think of tight end? We really didn't get there with him a month ago. It's important, I think, to ask that because, in Ballard's eyes, when you think about it, Eddie, he's spent a good amount on tight ends. I mean, if you look at the last 3 drafts, you've drafted one in round 4 in Granson, round 6 in Ogletree, round 3 Jelani Woods, and round 5 Will Mallory. I mean, 4 tight ends in the first 6 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be hard-pressed to probably find many teams that have done that in the last 3 years. So, again, how does Ballard view it? Does he view that as, oh, no, they still need time to grow? Is he taking Ogletree out of that group? How does he view Woods off the hamstring? A lot of those are questions for Ballard coming up next week. All right, man, you got anything else?
No, sir.
He is Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great, great week. Again, probably midweek next week, we'll be back recapping things from the NFL Combine. Thank you for tuning in to Kevin's Corner.